Good afternoon. I call to order.
Recording in progress.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
Go ahead.
I call to order the City of Bloomington Board of Zoning Appeals for June the 24th, 2021. Roll call, please.
Clapper,
Here.
Burrell,
Here.
Sandberg,
Here.
and Throckmorton.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. We have tonight 3 sets of meeting minutes to approve. I will start with the October 22nd, 2020 meeting minutes. Comments or a motion?
Move approval of those minutes?
Second. Okay, we have a second. Can we have a vote, please?
Burrell,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
and Clapper.
Yes. Okay, we've already approved the November meeting minutes, so we're going to jump forward now to March the 18th, 2021.
Move approval of those minutes?
Second. Great. Any discussion? If not, can we please have a vote?
Sandberg,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
Clapper,
Yes.
Burrell.
Yes. Okay. And we were not in session in April, so May 20th, 2021 is the last set of meeting notes to approve.
Move approval of those minutes?
Second. Wonderful. Vote, please.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
Clapper,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
and Sandberg.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We do have a resolution this evening under reports, resolutions, and communications. It's resolution 20-01, the electronic meetings policy. Mike and Jackie, do you want to speak to this?
Yep, Mr. Rooker will present. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Michael Rooker, City Attorney for the City of Bloomington. All of the city's boards and commissions have begun adopting similar policies, including the City Council, regarding hybrid meetings. So we call this our electronic meetings policy. Beginning July 1st, the governor's executive order that authorized fully in-person meetings is set to expire. The governor has been very clear that he will not be extending that, which means we are all going to get used to having in-person meetings again starting in July. But there is a new provision that was passed by the state legislature this past legislative session that allows for what are called hybrid electronic meetings. In that case, as long as not more than 50% of the members of a board or commission are participating remotely, and as long as they can participate simultaneously, board and commission members can continue to participate remotely. But again, it's just half of you. So the in-person meetings will resume beginning in July. But if some of you choose to participate remotely and you notify staff ahead of time and the numbers work out, you can do that. Now, there are some limitations on this. You can't participate in more than 2 consecutive meetings remotely. So you can do 2, but then you have to come back to being in person, and you can't participate in more than 50% of the number of the annual meetings of the Board of Zoning Appeals remotely. So you have to attend at least half in person. Those are sort of the basic limitations here. The policy also contains a provision that says if any member of the BZA is participating remotely, members of the public may also participate remotely, and staff may participate remotely if it's practicable for that to happen. We also include petitioners there in terms of who may participate remotely if members of the BZA are doing so. Those are the basic contours. I hope you had time to look over the memo and the resolution. If you have any questions, I can do my best to address those now. Any questions for Mr. Rooker? I have one question, and that's about notice to the public. If a member wants to participate, they have to notify a member of staff at least 6 days ahead of the hearing.
And does that give enough time before the meeting is published to notify the public that there will be a Zoom component?
I think there's been, yeah, so it does legally. So there's been some confusion about this. As long as the notice includes the date, the time, and the location, the in-person location of the meeting, that legal notice is compliant, that notice is compliant. The Zoom component is just like gravy on top of it. It just gives an alternative option. It's not legally required that we publish notice of the Zoom link. Now, of course, as soon as we know that the meeting is also going to be a hybrid meeting and there's going to be a Zoom component involved, we will let the public know as soon as possible by putting that up on the website, just the way that we've done it throughout the pandemic. But we don't have to worry about blowing some legal deadline because we don't include the Zoom link in the notice.
Okay. And out of curiosity, how will this just work when we're in council chambers? Like, will there be a screen? Will we have split screens, or logistically?
Yeah, everybody's wondering that too, and I'm wondering it myself as well to a certain extent. IT has been working on that, and council chambers is particularly well set up for both in-person and remote participation, just given the quantity of the screens both behind the BZA members and in front of you from the dais. So I don't expect that it will be a problem at all. I have not had an opportunity, though I have reached out to ITS to get a full feel for precisely how this will work. You know, I hate to defer to somebody in this way. I don't know if Councilmember Sandberg, I know you've probably sat through a number of these meetings where this electronic meetings policy has been discussed. I don't know if you've gotten better details on that than I have.
Actually, no. I think we're all kind of waiting for Mr. Dietz and ITS to kind of work through those logistics. But of course, with a Zoom component, you're also going to have monitoring of that. So that's going to be additional work for whoever the staff are who are, running the meeting, as well as paying attention to who's waiting in the Zoom room. So these are things I think we're going to work out as we go, but I'm sure we can.
Yeah,
And I think at the very beginning of work from home and pandemic, we did a kind of hybrid BZA meeting. It's hard to remember, but I'm pretty sure it was BZA. And Andrew Krebs from the mayor's office basically ran a Facebook Live at the same time as our meeting. So I don't know that it'll be similar to that, but just saying that. So, in the event that it's kind of not all buttoned up by next month, there is already a process for it to be possible. It might not be where we end up ideally if this goes on for a while, but we have done something very similar before. So I think it should be okay.
And just to reassure everybody, I've done hybrid meetings in court where the judge is present in the courtroom with some members and other folks are participating remotely, and that worked quite well. I think that they're well seasoned with that. They're well practiced. We're still going to be learning maybe for a little bit, so be patient. But I know that it's something we'll be able to do.
Okay. Well, thank you. So we need to formally adopt this proposal or this resolution.
Yes.
Okay, so I will need a motion to adopt.
I will move that we adopt resolution 20-01.
And I second it.
Just for clarity, it's 21-01, I think.
Oh, 21-01.
Did I number it incorrectly? No. Okay.
No, that's it.
I heard it wrong.
Okay. Any
Discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for a vote.
Clapper,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
and Throckmorton?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Rooker. We are on to petitions. There is one petition that has been withdrawn. That was V-06-21, David Kerber. Two petitions continue to the July 22nd meeting. CU/V-19-20, Robert Iatarola, and V-05-20, Nancy Armstrong. Tonight on the docket, we have one petition, that's V-08-21, Starbucks Coffee Company. Staff report, please.
Great, just a minute, I'll share my screen. Can you see that? Okay, great. Okay, so this petition tonight, as Ms. Clapper said, is V0821. It is a petition request by Starbucks Coffee Company. The request is located on South Liberty Drive, just north of West State Road 45, so West 2nd Street, Bloomfield, 2 properties in from that intersection at the southwest part of the city. The property is 1.05 acres. At the time of filing, it was zoned plan unit development, and that was in our Park 37 PUD. And the comprehensive plan designation for this area is employment center, which does allow some supportive commercial. And as I mentioned, it's located on South Liberty Drive. And some of the surrounding uses include a multi-tenant center, a retail, restaurant, financial institution. So largely commercial in this area currently. The petition request tonight is for a variance to allow vehicle parking in excess of the maximum vehicle parking allowance for the use restaurant. You can kind of see the site plan here. It's a little grainy, but we'll zoom in a minute on the parking. Based on the restaurant, the parking allowance for our use restaurant is based on the dining space of both the interior and outside, the interior and exterior dining areas. So for this building, that is a combined total of about 1,150 square feet, and the parking allowance is 11 spaces. The proposal before you tonight is requesting 33 parking spaces, and 9 of those parking spaces would be designed to be done with permeable pavers. Those are located in the polygon on the far right. So those located kind of on the way out of the facility. So even if all of the spaces were done in with concrete or normal asphalt, this property would still be meeting its impervious surface coverage requirement. So it is not bumping up against any of our other regulations. Some that are dictated by the PUD, and then some dictated by the UDO. It is only the number of parking spaces that they have an issue with. So as you know, for development standards variance, there are 3 criteria that we look at. The first is the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. And number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. There are findings in your packet that indicate that staff thinks that the petition can meet both of those findings pretty easily. As you saw, it's a largely general commercial area, and having parking that's not over the impervious surface maximum does seem to meet these requirements. The third requirement is where we are kind of having a sticking point currently. So it is that the strict application of the UDO will result in practical difficulty of the use of the property, and that those practical difficulties are peculiar to the property in question, and that the variance can offer relief. So we are familiar with the use. There obviously are Starbucks that we're all familiar with in town and in many other places that we go. But what we have done in the past when people have requested similar variances is that we have requested that they indicate through car counts that because of the situation surrounding where the property is located, for example, combined with the type of specific use they're requesting, that they need that parking in order for the use to be able to function properly. So we've done that with other restaurants. We've done that with doctor's offices as well, multiple different uses. So we did request that information from Starbucks, but we haven't gotten it yet. We do think, that there are characteristics of this site that it will be likely that we will be able to write a positive finding for number 3. But we would feel more comfortable looking at numbers for comparable Starbuckses to be able to say that they have, in fact, demonstrated that there are practical difficulties here in order to be able to operate the way that this store is intended to operate. For example, there is no street parking. There aren't really shared parking opportunities here. It's obviously, near a major intersection, also close to the highway. those are all very real life characteristics of this site that do point to potentially needing more parking than code allows, combined with the fact that, especially during COVID, the model of this type of restaurant has changed in some ways, and there is a lot more what we would consider kind of pop-in traffic than maybe we would even have seen 2 years ago. So we do think it's possible, but we would feel more comfortable recommending approval to you, to this body, if we had actual data from similarly located Starbucks restaurants, indicating that yes, they cannot really operate under the 11 because of all of the details I've mentioned. So for that reason, the department recommends to the Board of Zoning Appeals that the petition be continued. We wanted to bring it to you in case you didn't agree and felt that there was already enough information, and we, could write a finding for number 3 and let the petitioner basically have the opportunity to make that argument to you. And since it was already on the agenda, and otherwise we'll ask you to continue it. So I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Jackie. We are to the petitioner's representative.
Mr. Timko, you should be able, there you go, to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Could you please state your name?
Yes, this is Mike Timko with Kimley Horn Associates. I'm here on behalf of Starbucks.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You have up to 20 minutes to present your petition.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for being here tonight to hear our petition. Jackie did a really good job of teeing up kind of the requests that we're asking and a lot of the reasons of why we're asking it. So I think everybody is probably pretty familiar with Starbucks in general. I know that there's at least one in the Bloomington area already, but Starbucks is very excited to be opening a second location, especially with I-69 coming through where it is now. So like Jackie already had mentioned, this is a little bit of a unique site because of its location and proximity to the interstate. A lot of times when we have Starbucks in more of an urban setting, we see a little bit more of the pedestrian traffic, which in this case, we probably wouldn't see a whole lot of, which means that many more customers are coming via car. Also, I think everybody realizes that Starbucks has a very high traffic demand. It's a traffic demand that is very unique to their business model for a couple reasons. So for one, their building footprint compared to the output of customers is very unproportional to most restaurant facilities. And that's for a couple reasons. One, a lot of people that are coming to Starbucks are coming as individuals, a lot of times on their commute to or from work. So that's a little bit unique, whereas in a traditional setting of a restaurant, you typically would think of a higher proportion of families coming together. So the first point I'd like to make is that the number of individuals coming to a Starbucks compared to a regular restaurant by themselves is unproportionally high. The second thing is that the seating area that's provided in a Starbucks is a little unique as well compared to a traditional setting. As everybody knows, it's set up as a little bit more of a cafe style. So we think about more of the community seating kind of spaces as opposed to traditional booths and tables. The other thing is that because of how small the interior space is compared to the amount of traffic that's coming through, when we come up against a code like this, it puts us at a pretty big disadvantage. So for starters, the way this restaurant is set up, they would anticipate having a peak employee shift of 10 people. So right off the bat, we would be using 10 of the 11 spaces just for employees. A new thing that's becoming more popular, and Jackie was alluding to this a little bit, is that 3 of these 33 spaces that we're asking for are actually designated for mobile pickup orders only, which is becoming extremely popular in the restaurant industry. And a lot of what we're hearing from folks is that even as COVID goes away more and more, they don't suspect this new trend to go away at all. It's something that they've seen have a lot of success, and they think people are going to continue to use it for the long run. So basically the way our parking count worked out, and this is typical for a Starbucks, is that we're looking at our parking count from the perspective of we're providing 1 space per employee at the max shift. We're providing 3 designated parking spaces for mobile order pickup. And then we're providing 1 space per 1.5 seats available inside the building. So Jackie mentioned we weren't able to get over a full-blown traffic study report at the time of this meeting. But I can say from the many experiences that we've had in working with Starbucks, that landing in the 30 to 35 parking count is always their goal. I know during Plan Commission, one of the biggest concerns that was brought up was about traffic and the implementations that it could have to the surrounding area. So we hear that, and we think it's extremely important to provide an adequate number of parking spaces for a handful of reasons. Obviously, we don't want our customers parking on neighboring properties, but we also want to make sure that there's enough so that it's not becoming in conflict with the drive-through either. Because that's always the concern with Starbucks is the drive-through, especially during the peak hours. So that's kind of what we wanted to present. Obviously, we're here for any questions, more than happy to discuss. But again, thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We are to the board for questions. Anyone? Susan?
Well, Mr. Timko had already answered a question that I was going to ask about the number of employees and how many spots would be required for them. I understand that that's just at peak times, but is there also some sort of surveying of the area? That's quite a heavy employment area, is it not? And I would imagine this is going to be a Starbucks that will attract quite a bit of business, perhaps more than just the drive-through business, but maybe people wanting to take advantage of the cafe space. My question is, I'm assuming that this will be an internet cafe, that it will be Wi-Fi and for people to come in and do work inside. Is that true?
Yes, that is correct. And that's a great point. And I think it's all the more important now that I-69 is running through Bloomington. It's not going to be just the commuters on a daily basis. You are also going to see those people passing through that are looking for a place to get out and stretch their legs for a little bit and take advantage of those incentives that Starbucks offers.
Right. And if this is going to be continued, it might be good to just gather the number of the related, employers around this site that could very well be part of your business.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? Okay. Jackie, I just have a general question about parking counts for restaurants. The way it's laid out, it's the number of parking spots per square feet of seating area. Are there allowances made for employee parking?
The code, not in the strict, no. So it's based on seating area. Our new code does allow some leeway for the director to allow some greater parking, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the exact term, but allow you to have more parking. So if you could demonstrate that you did, again, need more. This case, I think, was kind of borderline about whether or not it could meet those requirements. It does require things like the parking totals of other stores to show, but there is some flexibility, but not in the strict table. But code does allow for some flexibility as part of the new code, something that we didn't have before.
Okay. And if there are no other questions at this time, we'll go to the public. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this petition? Jackie, I don't see anybody.
I don't see anyone. I think,
Whoops.
Well, he is the property owner, so I think he would have to be reserved for.
Okay. Yeah. So that's Mr. Kamen?
Yes.
Okay,
Mr. Rooker can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he would have to speak during the petitioner time.
Yeah, he would not qualify as a member of the public, but I do believe the petitioner reserved quite a bit of time.
Yes,
So.
definitely.
there should be ample time.
But no, I don't see anyone else.
Okay, so seeing no one from the public, then we are back to the petitioner or associated parties with the petition who would like to speak. If Mr. Kamen would like to speak now, I just would need to swear you in.
You should be able to unmute Mr. Kamen. Try again.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. Could you please state your name?
David Kamen.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and you all have reserved how much time, Jackie?
About 14 minutes, I believe. Let me
Okay.
check here. 16 minutes, excuse me.
So please speak.
Thank you for allowing us to, make the case here, so to speak. And I just like to speak in favor of it. I think if it gets continued, we'll have some timing issues of getting the building up before winter sets in. So I think it's also pretty obvious that Starbucks in general, this one, of course, is going to need the parking. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. We can, Mike can provide studies and so on, but it's, to me at least, relatively obvious that they're going to need parking to operate, because they're busy. The stores are busy. So, but I think the project will be great for the community. And I think that a lot of people are hooked on that stuff, including my wife, and my son. So they're looking forward to it because our office is right down the street. So I'll stop by every once in a while too, but I'm not a coffee drinker. But from the point of view that that they need parking, I think it's so obvious. It's like the elephant in the room, So I'm hoping that we don't continue it for some more information of why they need parking. But if you have to, you have to. I understand that. I don't know if my son Eric wants to say anything too.
Yeah, no, I think the point is fairly clear. I think to say that Starbucks is a regular restaurant within the parameters of what the code states, it's just the traffic, especially in the morning during the rush hour. It's going to cause more of a headache for us not to get parking than it would be for the greater good of the whole entire community for us to get this parking. So it's just based on our view, it's necessary for the tenant to operate. It's necessary for the community not to have a burden of not of having people park kind of everywhere, and maybe even traffic being backed up. And that's not what we're looking to do. We want to make this a clean, nice use, and we want it to be a good operation for the community.
We want to swear him in.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't swear you in. I'm sorry. Please state your name.
Eric Kamen.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, my apologies. Thank you, Joe.
I think that's all we got.
Okay, if no further comments, we are back to the board for action.
Susan.
Yeah, Susan.
Could I just ask a clarifying question? With respect to a study, who was to do that study? Was that just the city? Were we going to look at other Starbucks in the area
No.
for comparison?
Usually
Okay.
what we've done in the past, like for example, when the Culvers came in on West 3rd, they made a similar argument that the type of service they provide is not similar to a typical restaurant because you order and then they make the food. So they have all the people waiting, also the people eating, and then the people arriving. So what they did was provide numbers, I think they did 3 days in a week, and provided hourly counts. And so that is not atypical. I mean, when we discussed it with them, it was something they had, done before for other stores that are similarly situated. So other stores that have limited street parking, you wouldn't do, like Mr. Timko mentioned, you wouldn't do like an urban Starbucks because they don't, they don't need it. You would do another, highway adjacent kind of suburban Starbucks, and the numbers should show that roughly, that maybe they're not at 33 every hour, but they're in the high 20s, and then they, max out daily is what we've seen in the past.
Well, thank you for that. I know that we don't really have any data to go by with this particular location. I'm just thinking anecdotally for those of us that see all the traffic that's lined up at all the Starbucks. And of course, we're coming out of a pandemic in which people are staying in their cars and they're enjoying the pickup opportunities. But I guess my concern is, as we're starting to near the end of the pandemic, I think more people may be more likely to park and go in. And take advantage of the inside. So I tend to be somewhat sympathetic here, but I understand if we need more data to make a decision. I guess that's where we're kind of held up at the moment. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. Kind of. We didn't want to make them continue. We wanted you all to be able to discuss it because they are a well-known brand. You have an idea of what those are in your head, but based on what we've done in the past, I think we would feel more comfortable with hard numbers, but that we kind of want to leave that up to you guys in this instance.
Barry, do we need a motion before we have comments, or do you want comments before?
No, we can discuss.
Yeah. Well, I just had a couple of items, which is I'm not really inclined to grant relief on this. 3 times the size and parking is a huge jump. It seems to me that there are also some other issues in terms of public safety and also the safety of those that use the facility. All you got to do is look down the street at the other Starbucks. They have cars backed out into the road surface because they just simply don't have enough room to accommodate the drive-through, especially at peak hours. The space between the parking, the slant parking as you come in, it's a 12-foot wide entrance there to the south. And then when you come in, if they have a backup, cars aren't going to be able to use the parking spaces as they're designed, which is to come in and leave. They can't park and then they can't leave. There's really just not enough space there. And it's not from specifically the design, but it's going to be how people use it. They're not going to be cognizant of the cars that are parked. That's just the way it is. You can see it at the Starbucks down the street. The other issue too is providing 10 parking spaces for the employees. I understand that we may have some leeway, but if someone was coming in and saying, can we have, a few more spaces for our customers, I could certainly understand that. But to try to jam 10 employees at peak hours on top of 22 other spaces, 3 of which they have chosen to designate as pickup, where they curbside pickup, that where they run in and get it, mobile pickup. That's, now we're just playing with numbers of 10 here, another 3 there, there's 13, so instead of 20, we're at 33. So I just, this whole site plan looks to me like it's going to be a nightmare to get in and out. You already have a restaurant to the north and then a bank to the south. That intersect is very close to that light intersection. There's a light there at the intersection. I just think that this space to me, it's not workable. So that's my comment on looking at this. Is it's going to be kind of ugly to get in and out of there and try to use it appropriately for what it is they're saying that they're trying to do with it. 33 spaces and the amount of drive-through traffic that you're going to have on the property at the same time at peak hours that's an awful lot of cars for a very small space.
So, Joe, are you asking the petitioner for some more information? This is another reason why you'd like to see?
Yeah, I don't think that's a good question, Barry. I don't think I need more information. I mean, I can see from looking at the plan that even if they came back to me and said, here's what we found at 3 other restaurants, this plan just looks untenable in terms of me feeling comfortable giving them a variance. It's going to be a nightmare for the people driving through it and the people trying to park.
Well, as a follow-up to your some of your thoughts, Joe, I would like to ask the petitioner to talk a little bit about just the design approach where all the traffic enters into the parking lot, so that you have to have the order, the lane, you have to go through it essentially in order to go to the window to place an order. Sort of, I know, having gone to a lot of Starbucks, I know that this is a standard design. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about this and why this works and why this makes sense for the business?
Sure, absolutely. So what I'd say for starters is that this site is dramatically different from the Bloomington site that's there currently. And the reason that we have things set up the way we do with where you come in relation to where the drive-through is because it maximizes the amount of drive-through queuing possibilities. The other thing that's different about this proposed Starbucks from the existing Starbucks is that Starbucks has done a substantial amount of studies regarding the appropriate spacing from the menu board to the pickup window. And they found that this new spacing of 120 feet or approximately 6 cars allows them to maximize their operational efficiencies when it comes to how many people are waiting in line after making their order. So there's going to be efficiencies that haven't been seen in Bloomington before when it comes to this drive-through facility. I guess my counterpoint to some degree would be, I guess, what would need to be done for this to be possible, because we've maximized the drive-through length. We're trying to provide additional parking so that people aren't getting in the way of each other. And by having a one-way flow with a wraparound in the front there, you're giving people an escape route to keep going and to keep the flow of traffic moving. If this were two-way, it would be all the more complicated. We worked with the engineering department and planning staff on having the 2 one-way entries as opposed to 1 shared, because we all believe that it did actually promote better flow of people coming in and out. The other thing I'll mention is that on Liberty Drive, there's already an existing 2-way turn lane designated in the middle, which will again help to make sure that it's not backing up traffic that's passing by on Liberty Drive.
Thank you.
Mary, oh, sorry, if I may add, Susan may be able to speak to this more, but the Plan Commission added a condition where this entry drive will have to be striped to designate where the where the drive-through traffic will be. I mean, to Joe's point, so it's obviously a limited amount of space. If you are driving through there or trying to back out of a space, you're going to have to work with whoever is around you. But to kind of delineate that space more so than in this existing site plan, when were this to be approved and were they to go forward with a grading permit, that will have to be on site, painted in some way, so that it's clearer sooner when you get on site, like where, if you're trying to get to the drive-through, you stay to the left or whatever the case may be, if that's helpful.
You know, and one other issue there, Barry, too, is, the question is what more can be done, which is a compelling question. And across the street is a huge parking lot. So why not just rent 10 spaces for your employees? I mean, take out 10 spaces and you're getting much closer to something that I could feel comfortable giving a variance for. But to simply have to have 10 employees parking on the property when you're 25 feet away from a huge unused portion of the parking lot, I just think there are other options instead of just jamming 33 spaces into this.
Was there any discussion of shared parking, Jackie?
Mr. Timko would have to speak to that, but I don't believe so.
Okay.
Oh, I don't believe so either, Jackie.
Okay. And I saw that Mr. Kamen would like to comment. I think that's fine, Mr. Kamen, if you'd like to add.
Yeah, to kind of
conversation?
buffer, I don't know, can everybody hear? Can everybody hear
Yep.
me? Okay, to kind of buffer what Mike was saying is a lot of the interstate Starbucks, and I think Mike can speak to this better, actually on half of an acre, which creates even a tighter area and more of a concern for a traffic jam. I would say on a full acre, it's quite a bit more comfortable to get in and get out of. And I think that that's why they wanted to use the entire acre as opposed to most interstate Starbucks, I believe, are on half an acre. Mike, is all that right?
I would say a half acre is the absolute smallest, but we've certainly seen quite a few go in on 3/4 of an acre.
Yeah.
So,
So this is roomier and you know, easier to deal with and access for people that frequent the store.
so I'm just going to comment. I think that this is part of the reason why some more information was being requested, so that you can help kind of frame our discussion. You've heard our concerns and some of the thoughts and our initial thoughts about the petition. So if you could kind of help us understand how other Starbucks operate. Is this a large site versus a lot of other sites? You know, I'm personally very familiar with the South Walnut Street Starbucks. I know that suffers from a terrible amount of congestion. I would like to understand how you think this site will operate as opposed to that site, because that is a major location here in Bloomington. I think for me personally, I think it would very much be helpful to get a better understanding of what the expectations for the performance of the site would be, and to know whether whether the petitioner would be open to looking for some off-site shared parking opportunities. I think that's an excellent suggestion. It's an enormous surface parking lot right across the street. So whether that allows for more possible parking on the site, which might even be better. I just think that this is something personally I think should be looked at, and I would be interested in hearing more about.
Barry, also, I think that your comment about the South Side, there's like multiple. There's 3 or 4 other Starbucks in town. The South Side one is nearly identical to this. It has the wraparound drive-through. And that's the one I'm thinking about. It's backed up onto Walnut, and it's an incredibly dangerous parking lot. So I appreciate you stating that one, because I think that's something that's where some information could come from. My question to Jackie is this: what's the normal width of a parking space, or what's the preferred width? Do we have it in, what's the code?
A parking space, it's 9 by 18 is typical.
9 by 18 is typical? Is that like the smallest, or is that what we recommend?
Oh, I think actually we just changed it to 8 by 18. And I can let you know the 45 degree might be slightly different. Just a second.
Yeah, because it looks like these are at 60s.
Yeah.
So these are 60 degrees at 9 feet across, and I just wondered how that fit into your scope.
They do meet. So when Mr. Roebling did the site plan review, there were not issues with the design. It's just number. So I think there's like one parking space there on the maybe northwest corner that is like missing part of the corner that they maybe won't be able to fit in. But otherwise,
also the one down in the south, isn't that one with at the very bottom space that's cut as well?
Right. That those may not. Right. That those two corner ones may not make it past. So I can clarify that for you if you continue it. I can look this up quickly, but I think if they were to get the variance, it would basically be a maximum so that then if they couldn't actually design it to 33, then they could do 31 or if that makes sense.
So can I ask you this question? Just one more quick question, Derek. So if there was more seating inside the building, there would be more spaces that we could grant on this on this
Yes.
property, right?
Inside or outside,
Yeah.
yes.
How much more are we talking about?
I mean,
I'm
yeah,
just
they
curious.
are-
I know that they're not going to make a design change. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's comparable. It's, 3 times the size of what it is. I mean,
Okay,
they're
so
asking
whatever it
for
is,
3
it'd have
times
to
the
be,
amount.
it'd have to be times 3. Okay.
Any other questions or thoughts before we entertain a motion?
And can I make just one more statement?
Actually, let's hear first from Susan Sandberg.
Sure.
Susan?
Well, again, I just want to clarify that what the waiver is about the number of parking spaces, right? We are not doing a design review here, although I think it's very helpful to compare and contrast the urban Starbucks that we're all familiar with within the city, and then this location, which has been described as more of a, I guess, a rural area on a major interstate. And so it is kind of apples to oranges. So I want to be clear about that as we go forward, whether we continue or whether we, make a determination about, the maximums, and then of course they could scale it back as more review has to occur, right, with the site.
I think we're allowed to, the petitioner, Barry, I may be wrong, but I think the petitioner can bring us a petition for a variance, but we can actually in our recommendation say, this is what we recommend that you do. And that could even be something where we say, hey, we recommend that you go back and think about redesigning. They don't have to do what we say, but it does. We are able to put some of that into the language if we want, Susan, I think.
Right. I'm just kind of clarifying as how much review has already been done and how many concerns staff have about this site, and is it too crammed and is it not safe? And
Yeah, right. So, yes, we has received a site plan review by the Plan Commission. This drawing may be, it's not quite exactly right because it hasn't been, it was filed before that final revision one was. So I'll make sure if we do continue to give you the very most updated, it hasn't changed significantly, but a little bit. Yes, I mean, I think to the point of both board members, yes, the variance is for how many parking spaces, but I think it's okay to kind of discuss the wider plan and the effect of what that variance would mean. If they're asking for 60 parking spaces versus 33, that's still the same variance, but the details are different. And Mr. Rooker can of course chime in if we go off the rails a little bit, as he does.
And if I could just ask another question with respect to if we have any concerns about the number of parking spaces and the number of cars, do we also have concerns about cars that are in line and idling, as opposed to cars that come into a place like this and actually park and go inside to get their coffee and come back out? Is there any at all consideration about that? I sometimes worry about that when I see all the cars, lined up and idling while they're waiting to get there, whatever.
And that goes to my concern, Susan, exactly, which is, you could fill up all 33 spaces, but it's the cars. And I appreciate, the distance between the actual menu board and the drive-through window, but that negates everything behind the menu board, which is where the problems occur, because the cars will be all the way out to the entrance. And then there may be a turn-only lane out on the street, but that doesn't change the fact that you could be backed up trying to turn left to get into that lane, because that lane, that's a pretty heavily traveled road. So your comment, Susan, I think is exactly what kind of concerns me about this. There's a lot of cars in a little space, and
But I think Susan's question also about what our purview is important, because we're not qualified to do a safety analysis of drive-throughs. We just, we don't have all that information or background. But in thinking about the number of spaces and how that may help or hinder the function of the site, I think is well within our understanding of granting a variance. And so, because this is really, they're asking, otherwise it meets our UDO. They're just asking for more parking spaces. So, yes, Flavia.
Thank you. Um, I enjoy the discussion, and I think we bring up a lot of different questions. This site in particular will be a site that will require cars to go there. People coming from I-69 or people that are in the businesses. I think parking will be very important in this site. This is different than a downtown or any other Starbucks. And I think people also give the public a little credit. If I were to go and sit and enjoy sitting there, I wouldn't go in peak hours because I know I would be trapped by the drive-through lane. So I think the public also will work through peak hours and times. But I do believe that in order for the Starbucks to work, it will need parking. There is parking across the street, but Starbucks does not own that parking. And I deal with real estate, and sometimes neighbors do not want to help neighbors. So we need to look at the property that the site that we have in front of us, and then the purview and the questions that we've been asked tonight. And the question is, do they need more parking spaces? I believe they do. Is it 33? I don't know what the number is, 11. I think it's not enough. And I understand this is a different type of business. This is not a restaurant where you come with a car full of people, sit and stay for 2 hours. You might come and stay for 2 hours, but it's one person in one car. So there is a peculiarity about it, that it will be a lot of individuals driving there for a specific purpose. So I am sympathetic with their request. I think the site, I mean, where it is, it's problematic. The middle lane will be helpful. You know, I can't, it's not my purview to talk about traffic. I would think that if I was using the drive-through, I would, as I'm exiting the site, I would turn right, even though if I wanted to go left, because I don't want to be blocked or stopped in the middle lane. So I think the public does learn to use the sites as well. And I think we can, as a group, decide if they need more parking spaces or not, if we are able to give a variance or not. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
And then last thing I'll comment before anyone makes a motion is I'm not opposed to doing a continuation, but if we're going to have a motion tonight, I wouldn't support it. I happen to think that after years of watching the nearly identical layout on South Walnut, that I just don't think that people get it and they don't respect each other, and it's dangerous. But I would support a continuance.
Thank you. Susan?
And if I could just say, I think I've already expressed being somewhat sympathetic to their need for more parking. And so I would, you know, if a continuance is the will of this body, that's fine, but I would be prepared to vote tonight to grant them their variance.
Okay. And Mr. Timko, did you have some comments you would like to make?
Yeah, and I'll keep it short just to be respectful of people's time. It's really more of a question for Jackie. I just want to make sure I understand and ask a question real quick here to kind of drive a point home. We have conditional approval from the Planning Commission, and that condition was that we would either go to the BZA to get this number of parking spaces approved or meet the code, which would be 11 spaces. So legally, we can move forward with 11 spaces and go about our merry way with our site plan, correct?
Yeah, I mean, so you have a grading permit in review right now. It shows 33 spaces. If you want to submit a new drawing that shows 11 spaces and have us review that and get a grading permit for that, you can. And then, you know, if you get a positive outcome from this board next month, you would then have to pay to amend your grading permit back to 33 spaces. And have it re-reviewed. I mean, it's basically, we've already reviewed it, of course, in this, but yes, I mean, there would be a way to keep moving, I think. because the stage where you're at now would just be earth moving, right? Not actual construction, probably within the before this body meets again.
Sure. And don't hear me wrong. That's not what I want to do by any means. But my point is that we're doing what we think is best for everybody. And if there's so many traffic concerns, I'm confused as to why removing parking stalls is going to help. So if we're asking for a new allowance of a max parking count, if it's a lesser number, let's discuss it. But to say that this just isn't going to work and we don't like it, that doesn't really get us anywhere, because it's within our legal right to move forward with this site plan.
Well, I'll just make the point that it is your right. And if you want to go forward with 11, this body doesn't have to weigh in on it, and you can. But if you're insisting that you cannot with 11, then they are able to tell you this use isn't appropriate here, and we're not going to let you have more. So, I mean, it is entirely within their purview to have these discussions. Sometimes uses just aren't appropriate in places, and they may decide that if you can't meet our code requirements, that this use might not be appropriate here.
And Jackie,
yeah.
I think he brings up a really good point, which is he can move ahead with 11, but he had a question of how is that safer? It's safer because there's 22 less cars on the property. So if you follow code and have 11 spaces, you're going to have a lot less congestion and opportunity for accidents or problems. So, I mean, that's the answer to the question of why not just move ahead with the planning, meaning the UDO. The UDO is there for a reason, to make sure that there's not too many spaces there. That's where the unsafe, that's where my concern comes from, which is you're adding 22 additional spaces to the code. That's a lot of cars, for that restaurant. That's not a restaurant. But I want to make sure that we answer that question of absolutely, when the planning commission gives you, here's the UDO and you can build it, you can absolutely build it with 11 spaces.
Jackie, just a little bit of a different line of thought. I wanted to understand the impervious or the pervious surface of the 9. Why was that being done specifically?
I think Mr. Timko can speak to it, but I think just as a way of not increasing the impermeable, not because it's required.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was coming out of a specific. So it was from the petitioner.
Yeah, I think partially, one of the concerns about extra parking is you're creating extra asphalt, basically. So then they have said we're not comfortable doing it in all the spaces because of how heavily trafficked they are, and that where it has quick wear on permeables, but in these that are probably mostly going to be kind of used the least, that they thought they were appropriate there.
Okay. And I have a question for Mr. Timko. How many vehicles is there stacking room planned for on the site?
For the drive-through?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shoot. Let me see if I can find it real quick. And Jackie, I don't know if you remember off the top of your head, but I thought it was somewhere between 15 or 16. Let's see if I can find it here.
And I guess whether it's 15 or 16, I guess the specific number isn't that important. I guess I want to understand if that's the typical number, or is that in terms of Starbucks ideal setting, layout? Is that what you would look for in a situation like this?
Yes. So this is actually their new standard for when it comes to drive-throughs, is this setup here. And again, this is a function of the menu board placement from the window, and how that creates some efficiencies and makes the line go quicker in general. So this does meet their new corporate standard for what they're looking for in a drive-through.
Okay.
I didn't see that in the petitioner statement, but I might have just missed it.
Okay,
I
well,
believe, oh, sorry, Barry, if you can see my screen, I believe what he said indicated before was that from here where the ordering takes place to the window is 6. So, and Mr. Timko, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you said that. So then, you can imagine this same length wrapped around. It just
Another
depends
6.
on how far back you consider the waiting line, probably.
right, right. So if we do continue the case, I think it would be helpful just to understand, again, a Starbucks in this kind of scenario, what are the typical, stacking numbers that you're likely to see during peak times? Because I think there have been some concerns voiced about the location and that there would be a lot of demand, and that it could have some implication for the adjacent street.
And I do want to make sure I'm clear. I have concern about 33 spaces, not the actual location.
Okay.
Because adding additional 22 cars plus on top of that, most likely another 16 cars in line, as much as, that's my objection, is if they follow code, there'll be less cars parked. We're talking about having 27 cars as opposed to 48 cars. And to me, that's my concern. And again, I'm happy to entertain this again with a continuous with more information, but my concern is not, hey, this property isn't conducive to a Starbucks. It is, and we have code that's told them what they can do. This is a significant variation from the code for me. That's my point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any further comments from commissioners before we entertain a motion? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion? Anyone?
Well, people are waiting. I'm not going to make a motion one or the other because I'll support a continuance, but I won't make a motion to one way or the other in terms of voting up or down on it tonight unless there's no motion made to continue.
Well, you're more than welcome to make a motion to continue.
I thought I'd wait and see if there was a continuance request, please. If there's no appetite for continuance, I'll make a motion. We can vote it up or down.
Would anybody else like to make a motion? Are we comfortable? We have to do something. We have to take some action.
Flavia, where are you?
I will say that if you do decide to consider it tonight, you will have to, of course, make a third finding because we didn't include one. And we've talked plenty about things that you could consider, but we won't want to forget to do that if it goes that way. And if it doesn't go that way, oh, sorry, go ahead, Flavia.
What do you mean about a third finding?
Well, we didn't include a finding in the packet indicating that we thought they had established practical difficulties because we don't think that they have yet.
So,
yeah, and then my notes indicated for if you do a continuance that we would be asking them to gather information about some of the surrounding employer data that would be likely to use this location, numbers for similar Starbucks with stacking and parking, and whether or not there are offsite opportunities in this area.
Well, so we don't have, the only option here is to continue then. Because I haven't done any studies to support the third finding.
Well, yeah, our suggestion was that comparable numbers would be a good basis for the third finding. But if you feel like you can support the variance, then in your mind, you probably have an idea of what you think, that there's no street parking, that there's no shared parking opportunities, those types of things. Those could be put together for a finding. You don't have to meet what staff thought was appropriate.
But if you
correct me if I'm wrong.
But if you also made a motion to deny the variance, you're doing that by just simply saying that we think that the site, we think that they should move ahead. Essentially, they can move ahead under the current.
If you make a motion to deny, then you'll need to say, and then with a proposed finding for for number 3 that practical difficulties are not demonstrated for this site.
Yeah, because which, as you've said, has not been provided because that's
Right,
why
and
we're talking
we
about.
just don't think we kind of don't think it's clear enough either way, which is why we would prefer more information.
Yeah, this is very difficult because again, I am generally in favor of their variance, but it doesn't sound like we have our language. We've not vetted it completely enough. So it sounds to me like we need to make a motion to continue.
Okay. So would you like to make that motion?
Sure, I would move that we continue V-08-21 to another meeting while we are determining the third variant, the third criteria. Is that the correct way to state that, Jackie?
I would say, yeah, a motion to continue into July for more information from the petitioner that could help resolve the findings. Does that sound okay, Mike?
I think that's perfect. Yeah, I wouldn't put it strictly on the third criterion. So.
Okay, so what Jackie said. I move that.
Do I have a second? I'll second that.
Great.
So could we please have a vote?
Susan?
So, vote yes, it's for the continuance.
Correct. Oh, I'm sorry. What is wrong with me tonight? Sandberg?
Yes, you can call me Susan.
Just Throckmorton,
Yes.
Clapper,
Yes.
and Burrell.
Yes.
Okay. So the petition is continued to the July 22nd meeting. That is the last of our business this evening. So we are adjourned.
Great. And that meeting will be in person,
It will be
Mr.
in
Timko,
person.
just so you know. So we'll send you more information.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you all.